Uh, Hello, good afternoon or good evening to all my classmates and Dr. Bull. My name is Clarence DuBose. Today, we're going to be focused on Chapter 3, Integrating Technology and Media Using the Assured Model. Um, well, this setting is my classroom at the high school, but when you think about incorporating lessons, you think about the standards that you want to be addressed, the objectives that you want your students to achieve, the mastery of, the resources, the materials, everything that you want the students to acquire. Then, of course, with the assessment, then you have a chance to have some time to reflect or even evaluate yourself, or others will evaluate you. We've been doing that. But now technology has forever been changing our way of teaching, and definitely it's been changing the way that we teach our students. So let's go ahead and begin, shall we? We have with integrating technology and into media into instruction with the assured model. So we're going to find what the assured model is, and then how can teachers apply the model to teach every day, to teach daily lessons to teach. Now, what is the assured model? When we look at the assured model, it goes with the following abbreviations. It analyzes the learners. So basically, it's just basically acquiring prior knowledge to what the learner has already know or has already been taught. The state and objectives. You have to acquire your state standards to to what you're trying to teach the students. You need to select the type of strategies and resources necessary to teach your student. With selecting strategies, and we'll go into that in more detail. U represents the utilize of resources, and also by utilizing the resources, you have to acquire where they're coming from, if you can use them appropriately. Because remember, because we still have the copyright and fair use laws to also, and that's required to education as well. You require learner participation, and also to evaluate and revise your your lesson. See that you to see if you have to if you in your mind thinking like if your lesson's been successful or not. So like when you're analyzing learners, basically what are their general characteristics? What are the general characteristics of the learners? Um, what knowledge, what skills and attitudes do they have about the topic? What are their learning differences and what are their leads? Because you have to think about this. Every student has the ability to learn. Some learn quicker than others, but everybody has the ability to learn, and every student learns differently. That's what you have to keep in on consideration. Now, when they're in my classroom, like for the past couple of years, when we were, especially when I'm doing like my SLO evaluations, I've always my mastery for my students is for them to either to know the elements and principles of art, and also to demonstrate the skills of the elements of principles of art with like 85% or better. So before I do anything, I require like a pre-test, just a pre-test, just to see what the students know or what they don't know. And, of course, because sometimes, every teacher prior to that, they have a different style, or sometimes they didn't never cover that information. So basically, whatever, well, it can go either way. For a positive standpoint, if they've already know the information, you can add on to what they've already know. So if they don't know, you can add to what they can add what they need to know. Now, also like entry tests is basically they determine like the necessary prerequisites, the competencies, just to benefit from the instruction. Okay. Now, also, in addition, like I mentioned, every like I mentioned earlier, every student has the ability to learn, but they also learn differently. And this is no exception. And this is no exception. So when you think about like learning differences or multiple intelligence, now with multiple intelligence, um, teachers have to identify and analyze the unique differences and needs of the individual learners. Okay. Now, Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence suggests that a person can have variation of abilities in 8 areas. Verbal, verbal linguistics. Basically, they learn from teachers talking with using their mouth. Logical mathematics, like you can incorporate mathematical skills, and the students were able to pick it up. Third, visual. I'm a visual learner myself. Sporadic. So basically, I learned by just seeing the lesson. Four, you got body kinesthetics. You got now for my students, they always got like movements. They always have like they learn well with movements. Musical, you got students that learn well by with listening just music, and they could just create a lyric or create a song with the technology. Possibilities endless. Naturalistics, they love nature, so they can you can apply like stuff within involving with nature. That's where like science pretty much could come in. And also externalistics, externalistic. Oh, I'm sorry, interpersonal, intrapersonal, because you got students that some like introverts and you have some that are extroverts. So they're more like externalists. So that what you would keep in mind. Now, with the standards and objectives, okay? Now, this is the second step. Now, the assured model, when you're incorporating technology and any types of media, the media has to it has to align with the state with your standards that you're trying to teach. Okay. Basically, what should the learners possess at the completion of the instruction? Now, the learning objective basically it derives from the curriculum and also the technology standards. In our case, maybe like the South Carolina technology standards or the ITSE standards. They describe what the expected student performance and the outcomes established at the school district, state, or national level. Now, in dealing with the standards, basically, like the three critical components using the Assure critical plan, you have to involve your strategies, the technology that they need, and the type of media section, whether it's on video clips or might be a song or whatever the case, or audio files, whatever the case. Then the assessment that they will be able to use, and the teachers have to develop the student learning expectations. Now, there are three when finding the strategies and technology and media sections. Okay, the statements have to be clear. what students will know and should be able to do at the conclusion of the lesson. So so as a teacher, you have to be able to carefully select the type of strategies, the technology devices, and the media that will ensure that learning. The assessment, the basis of the assessment, it has to align with the set with your standards and your learning objective because it will help ensure accurate assessment of the student learning. Now, also stated with the outcomes, it will provide a guide with when you create your lessons, okay, to measure the targeted knowledge and skills that are directly aligned with the standardized tests. Student expectations. Now, basically, your best the learning objectives may be viewed as like a type of contract between the teacher and the learner. My responsibility as a teacher is to provide learning activities suitable so you'll be able to attain the objective. And the student's responsibility is to um, learn that information so they can show that they can master the objective that you have. And also, I want to share this as well too. You know what I'm saying? Now, in providing for learning objectives, okay, um, you have the A, B, C, D's of the learning objectives. Basically, you have your audience, behavior, conditions, and you have the degree. Okay, that's very important. Basically, stating it. Now, developing objectives is nothing new. We've been trained for years about how to create an objective, especially um, when you involving when you're teaching a curriculum. Okay, now with the audience, um, basically with your audience, with in this case, these are my art students. Okay, as a teacher, it's very important that you clarify the identity of the students. Okay, for students, you will be teaching maybe all year. You may choose like your common audience as an identifier. Um, like back in the day where this is what we were taught back in PACE, where when we developing our lesson plans, and especially with the objectives, like the student will be able to, you know, that part. So the students they'll have individual now for the students who have have individual educational plans, the objectives will be targeted by the students by name. Now, the behavior is simple. Now, the heart of the objective is basically it's like verb describing. Okay, so that means like with the verb is stating like an observable behavior, such as you have to define, categorize, demonstrate. Now, you can also Bloom's taxonomy. Now, the last one we went over with the Bloom's digital taxonomy. So basically, which is the same, where students get to create, develop, construct, analyze, and so forth. So when you're dealing with your objectives, it strives to solicit student behavior or performance that will reflect deep understanding. And also you want to apply it into real world capabilities because now I know selling art, I try to do my best to try to sell art that the skills that I'm teaching you, based on the objective I'm teaching you, you can apply those skills into real world experiences. Some kind of forget because in their mind they're thinking about like, um, uh, how can how come um, painting a picture is going to help me with life? You know, they kind of see that part. But see, here's the, I mean, they may have seen like the projects, but what they don't see, and what I'm trying to teach them is like, there's more to it than that. Like you, I mean, sometimes you got to apply this like learning how to draw a line. You have like, if you're a barber, you got, I mean, you have to be very on point with like how you draw, like how you cut a person's hair, how you draw a line to get an edge up. Or when we're doing like sewing and knitting, that's like the same thing for like a beautician, how she braids in and weaves in like braids or so forth. Painting, color schemes. It's not much about just coloring things, pictures and stuff. Besides, whenever like I keep telling my students, whenever you get a house, there's a certain painting, there's a certain color scheme that you want to apply to your house, and not everything that you know just set up is going to look perfect. That's why you have to experiment, and you have to have the knowledge of the colors. And that's why, like for example, where they get like if they get to make colors, they get to create colors, so they'll know what type of mixture do they use. Like that could be applied. Like okay, I remember like if they need like a certain paint color, like I can like like if I need like beige or so forth, and I've made this in class, I can go to Lowe's and you know I can show like this is how much paint I need to have this type of color. That's the type of stuff what I try to teach the kids to go to apply into real world behavior, real world stuff. Now, same thing with like conditions. The learning objective should include conditions under which the performance is to be assessed. In other words, what materials or tools that need to be allowed or not allowed for the students to use demonstrate mastery of the objective. Now, the final requirement for a well-stated objective is the degree of the accuracy and the proficiency. So basically, you want to set a number goal to how they can achieve that goal. Now, when stating the degree or the criteria for assessing a student work, they're more comprehension like a rubric grading scale. Now, to my right, I have a rubric. It's broken up to 4 categories. 25 points is the most that they can acquire. It goes by effort, craftsmanship, creativity, and the follow directions. Now, when you're assessing that, basically when you're assessing that for your student, like let's just say that on the assessment, like an assessment that you give to your students, that they will identify the elements or principles of art with 85% accuracy. So when they take that assessment, and then when I grade it by the rubric, you know, they get the type of score, or when they develop like a project, and I go by this rubric, I got to go by see which did they meet those requirements. So you give like a performance rating, then you state the criteria and the description for it. Now, of course, there may be other when you're acquiring this, then basically this is where technology will come in. Now, like for example, like take math for instance, like they can give like a spreadsheet software like Excel, or I'm not sure what Google is, but I definitely know like Michelle, like Excel, Microsoft Excel. Like they've been given that software where students can give the data or the population growth of natural resources or global warming. And then the students can use that spreadsheet to estimate the impact of the population growth or natural resources, or at least 3 perspectives. Now, in my case, like if given like digital images for art, now students can use that. They can create and develop a biography presentation of a subject using PowerPoint or Google Slides, or maybe a presentation. And then also Students with Microsoft Word, they can uh, they can generate like a process table, um, like a process table that shows 25 similarities between the First and Second World War. Now, once you have you okay, now once you analyze what type of learners that you are dealing with, then you establish your state. Well, you establish your standards and your objectives. You have to select your strategies and resources. So, so basically, this is creating an effort that will help your students, and this is where appropriate use of technology and media will play a part in this. So, and which you include into your lessons. So basically, like for selecting your strategies, when you identify strategies for a lesson, now you have to either make it teacher-centered approaches, but also it has to be student-centered approaches. Now, as for teachers, you have to, I mean, it's always good when you can create your own activities. When you present a concept by showing a video clip or reading a story or using interactive board to engage student in, let's just say, in like a digital drawing of a still life. So what I try to do whenever time I introduce a lesson, I always develop with the PowerPoint. I show the PowerPoint, then I show the clips, whether I have created the clips or if I use YouTube as a reference. So basically, the student, and also to that will help enhance the learning. Now, as far as student-centered strategies, in which the teacher acts, I'm just like a facilitator. So basically, it could be like in small groups. In my case, like if I post up a artwork of, let's just say like Jackson Pollock, they will have the ability, like they'll pair up in groups and they'll decide to how to critique the artwork. So basically, by first they have to describe the artwork, they have to evaluate, analyze, interpret, and give a judgment of the certain artwork. So basically, and so while they doing that, then after that, we can go over it as like a class to discuss it. So basically, they'll give like their own opinions. They'll have their own opinions of the artwork as well. I would have my own opinions of the artwork. Now, when you're selecting strategies, you always got to consider two things, especially when you're preparing students. When you're preparing this for your students, basically you have the cognitive and you got the cognitive skills. Cognitive prepares students to analyze and use information. They also address the complex problems and issues, and they create patterns and mental models like a mental note in order to gain a deeper understanding and a new knowledge. The cognitive skills prepare the students to understand and control themselves and understand how to interact with others. Now, when you're selecting your resources, first decisions are made regarding technology and media and the types of support, okay? So also, in addition to selecting the materials, teachers often need to modify existing materials or they can design their own materials and to meet the specific lesson objectives. So, and I right here at the high school they have certain devices. The high school have their MacBook Airs that's given by the district, and the middle school they have like an iPad they've provided by the district. So we've been having those types of devices for maybe about 4 years running. So so we have to so with those technologies, the students have the ability to learn in a different way. Like if they needed videos to look at, I mean, it's right there. Or they need to communicate with the teachers, they can do that. I mean, just basic stuff. They have all different types of applications that they can make, that they can use to also to accommodate the diversity of the student learning. So, and like I said, we're mentioning videos. Now, videos could be raised an issue because of the presentational pace, and also it varies for the individual learners. Now, examining educational games, they look at relevant practices and feedbacks, like for selecting an audio storybook, or basically like a function such as an embedded definition, and also, just like returning back to the previously read sections. So I didn't have any problems when I was doing with videos, because what I try to do is after I teach the lesson, I play the videos. Sometimes, or my best in between, because sometimes they're very helpful because they allow they will help enhance what I'm trying to teach to the students. But you have to be very careful about how you select things, because YouTube don't always have appropriate stuff. So basically, you always got to review it. But we'll get to that later. And also with like when you're selecting a rubric, I try to make mine basic so it's easy to follow. But each rubric set includes a set of consistent and selection of criterias, as well as for the designated technology or media that you're going to use. But basically, when you're having the criteria, you have to first, all right, I want to share this to the students. I want to share this with y'all. Like, when you're developing like a rubric criteria, you always have to align yourself with the standards and outcomes of objectives. You have to provide the accurate and current information, age appropriate language, the interest level of engagement, technical qualities, the easy to use, whether you're a teacher or a student, bias free, and also uh, user guide and directions. Now, when you're selecting or you're modifying and designing materials, so you have to teachers always have to consider the following: that you have to select available materials, modify existing materials, and design new materials if you need to. Now, selecting like available materials, basically, it's like either if you use teaching, if it's off the shelf, if it's ready made or available from the school district or other accessible sources, many of these resources are free and expensive. Okay. And also, um, teachers may also want to include the media specialist. If you got that media specialist that can help you, that'd be very beneficial. Um, for especially with the materials, with the resource, with the technology that in the media that you may need to align with your learning objective. And also teacher collaborations. Teacher collaborations are great. Um, where basically if you have like an experienced teacher, I can my first year of teaching, Miss Anita Coxton, and man, she was great. She helped me a lot because we were able to collaborate ideas. Because with me being new, she told me like you should try this. You have to mix things up. Now, technology was limited at the time. So, but she gave me ideas where I can use lessons that can that I can encourage students multiple intelligence, because she always keep telling me like, you're going to have discipline problems if you're just doing just straight 2D work, you know? So, and that's where technology comes in. And also, you can survey online resources like Education World or ASCD, which basically it'll give you great resources and also common sense. It'll give you like what type of valuable resources that you can use while you're while you're trying to look for the appropriate um, technology that you need. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Now, this is basically, this is a video basically like, this is a sure model of learning. Basically, it gives like a simple lesson. So this is a pretty good one, and I would like to play this for you.
Sense. The Assure model of learning, a sample lesson. Our educational focus. You have been asked to provide teachers with training on how to use wikis for advanced educational purposes using the Assure model of learning template. Using the Assure model of learning template makes planning this training easy. Step 1. Analyze the learners. Learners consist of mixed age, gender, and race teachers. Because this is an advanced class, teachers have already received an introduction to wikis and are familiar with the purpose and possible uses of wikis in the classroom. Step 2. State objectives. Teachers will learn how to design lessons around wikis, create wikis that support lessons and encourage student communication and collaboration throughout the lesson, use wikis as classroom e-portfolios, use wikis for reflection and metacognition, and also meet the NET's standards needs for teachers. Step 3. Selecting instructional media and materials. Teachers will need a computer, internet access, and basic computer skills or tutorials. Step 4. Students will utilize media and materials. Remember, in this case, the teachers are the students. The students will need to sign onto the internet, register at a wiki site, create a wiki and add pages, and add content to the wiki about a particular subject using text and graphic media. Step 5, the most important step, for this is the step that requires learner participation. The learner will create a wiki, create a wiki page for notes, preview wikis used for education. Wikis in education have many uses. Teachers will take a look at a few so that they can get an idea of the many possibilities for extended use of wikis in their classroom. Next, they will form cooperative learning groups that will be divided either by grade or by subject. Teachers will design a lesson plan for their grade or subject. Teachers will search the web and other resources for content, add content to the wiki, and finally present the wiki to other teachers for evaluation. Step 6. Evaluate and revise. Wikis will be presented to the entire group, and feedback for improvements will be generated from the audience. The cooperative learning group will discuss suggestions and revise their wiki to improve the learning experience for students.
Okay. Now I'm gonna continue.
How many push-ups do you think you can do? I bet you can double it. I'm gonna prove it to you.
Okay, there's also one thing I would like to show you is Mastery Connect. Okay, now with Mastery Connect, this is a very good, useful place where you can get materials and that you can use for assessments. Now, when I mentioned where you can find materials where it's ready-made and easy to go, you can find that basically. This is one. I mean, there's probably other sources as well, but this is a great one as well too, where also that you get to develop your own assessment. You can place the state and the objectives to it. So I'm just going to give you. I'm just going to show you mine real quick. I'm just going to click on the class. Okay. Now, when I was looking, now with this, I had this was results from my students' final exams. So basically, and of course, these are the standards. These are the standards that they had to see if they achieve mastery. So when you click on the assess button, then of course, I developed the assessment, and then what they did, and then and I was able to give it to them. So basically, now of course this is already expired, but prior to the test, they had like a test ID, and all they had to do was log into their Mastery Connect, and then find their Mastery Connect, and they were able to take the test. So that was something probably like one of the websites that the Darlington County School District wants us to enforce as well. So basically, when you look at the scores here, and then of course the students, and then also where you can see where it's green, where they achieve mastery, and then of course you got students that might require maybe more remediation and so forth. That's a great example. Now, as we moving along, also when you modify existing materials, you can modify existing materials as well. Basically, many educational resources are basically provided as copyright-free digital files or as paper copies. Now, when you're using digital materials, they're typically found in like educational websites that you could download, like such as Teacher World or or maybe Pinterest. That's also a good example. Well, now other examples include like lesson handouts, teacher PowerPoint presentations that I often use to teach my students, and and you can others as well too, like the Excel spreadsheets. Now, when ready-made materials that are available, like I just already showed you, especially with Mastery Connect, because as a matter of fact, let me just, okay, like for ready-made materials, like you can click on assessments, and you can scroll down, and whatever assessment that you need, they have it. If you can, and just whether it's math, social studies, language arts, I mean, whatever you need, they'll be available. Like, let's just say if I click in like art, I hit search, and then you find all different types of stuff, basically with art vocabulary, different things, and then also they'll have like made by various teachers. So this is a very helpful, very useful. And then this is another one with dealing with arts elements and principles by another teacher. If I click on add, I probably just click on add to the tracker. Then I create. Then I choose what type of standards, and then create the tracker from there. That's a basic good idea. So moving right along. Now we're going to get to the fourth stage of the Assure model, which is utilize resources. You have to preview and prepare your materials. And then once you do that, you prepare it, you preview it. That's how you prepare the environment, prepare for the learners, and provide the learning experience. Now, it's very important, especially when you previewing the materials. Like when you're doing a lesson, like say for instance, if I'm doing like a lesson on Andy Warhol. Now, if you're familiar with art, Andy Warhol is he's a very talented guy, but he's very controversial. And sometimes his materials is not suitable for like middle school kids or sometimes even high school kids, to be honest with you. But sometimes like YouTube, they'll have some videos that are very tailor made for different ones for like appropriate age students. So like when you select the material, like if I'm selecting a material like for Andy Warhol, I have to preview it first just to see if it's relating to the learning objective and to make sure that it aligns with my lesson. When you're preparing the resources, you always have to gather up all the materials and equipment that you need to determine the sequence, using the materials and equipment and what you will do for each one, okay? And also you may want to create like an instructional game. So basically that will help you prepare for the resources. Now, if the audio portion of a video doesn't align with your needs of your students, then you can turn it off and you can be the narrator. Now, I had to use speakers for like my computers because both of my speakers are not working. So they were working, but they're not. So I was fortunate enough to buy some portable speakers and they work great. But see, that's just a part about, but you won't know that unless you try it like maybe like 2 days in advance. Or maybe like a day in advance before you try to experiment with your lesson. Now, when you prepare the environment, okay, with this is my working environment right here. Now, when the learning takes place, it can take place in a classroom, the laboratory, or a media center. The facilities have to be arranged for the effective use for the resources. Now, and you gotta make sure you check all your equipment as well too, because for example, I would say maybe about a couple of weeks ago, my LCD wasn't working. Now, I haven't used my LCD projector in a while. So basically, I assumed, and that was stupid of me, that it'll continue working, which as it should. But unfortunately, when the news show was doing it via YouTube, I couldn't show it to my students because because the LCD projector wasn't working. So that was kind of rough for me. So I had to make sure that I had to remedy it. But I was fortunate enough to have a person that helped me fix my LCD projector. So it's been working from this point on. But it's very key and very important to prepare, um, prepare the environment, and also to make sure that the screen is viewable so everybody can see, because certain people wouldn't be able to see the lesson if the screen is like too wide or it's too small. So basically, like maybe after school, you try it to see like if the screen is perfect for so everybody can see it, even if you may have to move around various tables to tables just to try it out. I mean, that's very key, and also in doing that, in preparing the environment for student learning. Now, as far as for the learner, so basically it's like uh, it can require like a proper warm up, which it can include one of the following. Like you can give like the book provides several examples, like introduction to giving like a broad overview of the lesson content, a rationale of how the content relates to the real world applications, or give it like a motivated statement or cues to directing like attention. Now, I just want to show you this. So one way about preparing the learner. So basically, preparing the learner is mostly like AKA, it's like the hook. With every effective lesson, you have to hook your students in. So then, therefore, you can they gravitate to you, and you can provide that information. So I'm gonna go to my Schoology account, and Schoology is a great material, a great resource either, and I'm going to go in one of my classes. Now, the daily art start is what I usually start off with my students, and basically what I did was give them the questions like, what is in their mind, what is art? So basically here, most of the students have already answered the question. So if you want to know what the question, you click on that. There it is. So when we start out the lesson, basically, in your opinion, what is art? And please respond in complete sentences, and you give like a short answer or essay. So that's like one idea where you can get your kids, just to get your kids writing, and also in a way that you can incorporate technology as well too. You don't usually have to incorporate technologies to prepare prepare the learner, but sometimes it's always helpful and it's effective. So yes. Now, the fifth one is require learner participation. So that's very key, especially when you're trying to grab the learner. So this is all starting to just tie in. So now with today's economy, now students, they have experience practicing, applying, analyzing, and you have sympathizing, and you have to evaluate more than just knowing just comprehension information. In other words, technology is helping the students to learn more versus traditional standpoint. Like back in the day when we was elementary, we used to, our teacher, whatever class, let's just say social studies, okay? That I remember my teacher, she always write all these notes down, and we have to just look at them, study them for rote memorization. Um, Sometimes I guess that was basically the most effective way of doing it, but now times have changed where you just can't just learn, like you can't just write stuff on the board and expect them to know it. So I mean, there's other different ways that you have to acquire your learner participation. Now, there's also the constructive views that learning is also an active mental process, okay? But built from relevant, authentic experiences or practices for which students receive informative information, feedback, a response that let them know to the degree to which they have achieved the objective and how they improve their performance. Okay? Now, basically, with you always have to practice trying to get, just for participation. So a teacher can basically, you have to inspire the innovation, support collaboration. You have to build information literacy skills, developing high order thinking skills, using educational software for practice, and using other media for practice. Now, when you're inspiring innovation, one common way of requiring learner participation is through the use of technology to express their creativity and their innovative ideas. So, like young children, like in the book, they said like young children can gain a deeper understanding about vocabulary, words when using software, like maybe like Kid Picks to locate images representing new words and adding personal definitions of their own. So that's just also one idea. And so I'm just going to go back. Okay. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to share my screen. Now, I gave my students a task, my sixth graders, to, in a way, they can use any type of presentation they want to create, have their ideas about what is like what is like elements and principles of art. I'm just going to show you this clip here. This is from one of my students, and this is one of my students, and they use that, and they use like an iMovie to create a presentation. So basically giving them like ideas where they can try to incorporate their ideas of student learning. And when they incorporate all that together, and then that helps them to learn the material more, because sometimes you always got to interpret like your own knowledge of studying this. So, and this is one of my favorite. This is one of my best students. She's a great student. So she's just getting started with this. So it just show all this information out, and I think she did a pretty good job with putting everything together. So I'm gonna let this finish on out. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there. And also when you're supporting, it's also important when students collaborate. Because it always helps, because it's very key to preparing students for future careers. So and to engage them in a collaborative activities in which they must communicate through various methods. Now, several years ago, I remember the sixth graders, they were doing they was writing to their pen pals from different states, and they respond back, talk to each other. And then once they acquired their iPads, they went on FaceTime and they were talking with that person from another state. So that's all important with collaboration. Now, another example of student collaboration is, let's just say like you may have a group of 3 and they're doing like a paper. Like, let's just say I have like them, they're doing like a paper on Frida Kahlo. So basically with their MacBook Airs, and because they have access to Google, like Google Docs, the best part about Google Docs is the collaboration. So basically, both of them can sync into the same paper, and then both of them's like, okay, like let's just say I have student A, they type a paragraph. Student B, they type into another paragraph. Student C, they type into another. And then this is like they've been working back and forth. So that is also an excellent part about student collaboration. Now, as far as literacy skills, now the internet is filled with a lot of resources, but students need information literacy skills in order to identify, evaluate, and use to make informed decisions. They also apply knowledge to new situations and to create new knowledge. Now, when I was dealing with art criticism, I would like last semester, I had my students like we had like different variations of artwork. So the students get to analyze or to describe basically what do they see. So basically they have to write in complete sentences. Uh, to analyze like in complete sentences. They had to analyze like how the elements and principles were organized, how they were put together. Interpret. It's like what is the artist is trying to communicate? Like what is he trying to say? And they have to respond in like complete sentences. And then forward, they give the judgment. Is this artwork successful? Is it or is it not? And they had to explain up in complete sentences. Now, as a teacher, it's very critical for me and for us to plan activities that engage students in processing information and reporting results that are meaningful for the task. Now, students can also do their research, which they include from books, periodicals, and from other people from other multiple resources. That will help them better ensure students that they do not merely cut and paste web-based information from their art, from their work. Now, it's also important that we also develop higher order thinking skills because under now today's curriculum and technology standards, it requires students to demonstrate applications of critical thinking through activities such as planning, completing, and a successful project that solves problems and they draw conclusions. Now, it's also important for like students to regularly examine information through the use of tools such as iPads, such as MacBooks, or whatever technology they advise, even iPhones. So they can use that to engage students in helping solve problem solving. And also digital games and simulations. Games, they also use competition to retrieve and acquisitiveness and to provide the acquisitiveness as a vehicle for students to gain content and knowledge. I'm gonna share the screen here again. Now, Kahoot is a great program. So I'm just gonna show a couple. I'm just gonna play this clip real quick. Now, this is some of my sixth graders, and we were going through a recap of like elements and principles of art. And then and the kids were able to use their technology. I'm not going to play all of it, but just just some, just to have an idea. It's of a color of a picture that's always going to show value. So, see what you got. Okay, Noah's in front. Aiden's is right behind. It's right behind. We're not worried about Phoenix or the ghost of Gabby or Angela. Last group. Second question. This line indicates a change of direction, grace, and activity that might be worked on. All right, very good. You got curb lines. Excellent. All right. Aiden's at front. Noah's behind. Is right behind. All right. Let's see what we got. Which art element is a two-dimensional area that is defined in some way? Okay, some got shape, rest has got form and okay space. I can see where it's based because it had like behind the picture you show the background, so it shows like that depth of space. But also, yeah, keep in mind there's also elements that follow with the shapes evolving in nature, which is more organic. So not bad. I kind of see someone will probably be up in space. And I guess the best part about showing about doing this activity is basically I get to explain for those who missed the question why they missed that question. And I think that's one of also this also a great teaching tool as well too when you're doing competitive games, but you're also applying to learn to have the students to learn as well. As we mentioned, like you can also use like software. I mean, it provides excellent resources for engaging students, as we just witnessed with Kahoot, with diverse abilities in individualizing learning activities that focus towards core content knowledge and skills. And also, it allows like students that performing lower than average abilities to move at their own pace, completing practices, activities while receiving feedback. Now, now for other media practices, it's like discussion, short quiz, applications. You also can provide opportunities and feedback during the teacher guides and manuals and suggest other techniques and different activities. Now, Schoology is an excellent technology outlet for that. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna show you another part of how valuable Schoology really is. So I'm gonna go ahead and exit this out. Let's just now, it contains all my quizzes. So all my courses, I'm sorry. Then I'm just gonna click on, yeah, click on Art 1, Period 1. It's a little complicated, but I think I kind of got it mastered. So, and then it says the reminders. So let's just say like for pop quizzes and stuff, I can go to here. Like if I go to add material, I can add an assignment, add a quiz or assessment. Now, if I want to add like another file or a link, like a YouTube video, I can do that as well. So basically, these represent the assessments. So basically, I'm just going to click on here. This is the assessment my students have done. See, and these are the questions. These are the and see right here by each question. This was the average score. You can tell that the ones that are excelled in and the ones that maybe struggled in. And when you click on by student, you get the grades as for the results. And also, and it's very important. And I know we touched on this on previous chapters. And I think especially on Sharina's presentation that learners always should receive feedback on their work. Um, it may come from the teacher, it may come from students in small groups, or they may come from like another person. But it's always very important, once you receive feedback because it's part of self-check activities that are done basically as independently or with a mentor. And sometimes it's often used technology. And I'm about to get to that in a moment. The final component is, all right, I want you to see this. The final component of the Assure model is evaluate and revise, okay? Now, the evaluate and revise is essential to development of quality instructions. Now, without this step, it is often impossible to know whether your instructions were successful and how to revise unsuccessful strategies. Now, we covered this on the last chapter, but this is also hits at home too, because this is also important when you're not only that you're incorporating the lesson, but not only this is not just a lesson, but also were the technology devices, were they appropriate enough? Did it help achieve the student objective? Now, one thing about evaluating student learning is evaluate on impact on student learning is like the assessments basically, because remember um, every student learns differently, but they can learn. So when you're impacting this, so now with technology being involved, I mean, there's a broad ideas that students can do. Like, of course, like let's just say for my students, it's like drawing like pictures or paintings, as you can see in the back, um, or making a sculpture, or if they're music, they can like create like a song. Excuse me, they can create a song, or a lyric or a song using GarageBand, Reasons, or any type of technology application. Um, it can just anything else that's relating to basically like, or even they can use like a Prezi presentation. They can also like incorporate Google Slides or the iMovie, as you just saw with one of my students' projects. So basically, this type of learning, it requires like more comprehension, basically. And we went over this last time in the last chapter, definitely authentic assessments, because basically there are performance-based evaluations of a student demonstrating their learning in a natural context. Basically, they're taking the lessons that you taught them, and they're putting it into their own way of learning. Okay, that's very crucial. And also, evaluations to your assessment and even to your instructional strategies. Like, were your strategies effective? Could they be improved? Now, did the technology and the media assist the students in learning the objectives? Like, were they okay? Did it gain student interest? Did it support meaningful participation? All of those were just like key components when you think about it. Now, as evaluating teaching, I mean, let's be honest. None of us is perfect, but we always try to strive to be better. And even when teachers, when I say earlier in my career, I used to be nervous whenever an assistant principal or principal come into my classroom. Even though I had everything set up, I had the objectives, I had my standards, I got the visual, I had the demonstration of the model going, how the students to model everything in effect. But still, by the end of the day, I just get nervous for some reason, because I was just afraid, because they was just going to say something negative. But as I got into further in my career, I was just like, okay, so I'm gonna do my best. But there's always room for improvement. Always need for room for improvement. Sometimes you can get evaluations from number one. You can do a self evaluation on yourself. Now, nobody's your worst critic than you, or at least I think so. Okay. Um, your students may evaluate your efforts as well too. Sometimes there can be like, for example, you can perform like give like a exit slip of like, do you think the teacher's lessons were very valuable? Did you learn such and trust me, kids can be honest, at least most of them. And then you can have like a peer teacher. Like, let's just say like you have like a peer teacher evaluate you, to see if everything is in place. And then of course you have your administrator, you know. Now, Classroom Mosaic is a great valuable tool for help evaluating teachers. Okay. So I'm still learning this too, because I'm a peer evaluator for the adept for adept for adept teachers. So I'm just going to go through Classroom Mosaic. Now, basically, this is the way with like how the technology works, because basically it could give you like timely feedback when you want to. So basically, this is mine right here. So as you can look, this is me as an evaluator, and of course, like observations. You click on observations, or if it was like for teachers that are summative or introduction, like first year teachers, or even formative teachers as well. So I'm not going to go into all the details, but this is just an idea. So when I also click here, I'm also a teacher. I'm also the teacher that's being evaluated. So of course, this is stuff my yearly evaluation of the SLOs. And of course, when you scroll down, if everything is like completed by you and your administrator, then you're good to go. So that's just basic. That's just how that's working. I'm not sure if y'all have Classroom Mosaic, but it's very good as well, very useful. And also, when you're evaluating yourself or someone's evaluating you, you always have to consider like whether like your strategies or your resources are very helpful as well too. And I think now, um, and sometimes your strategies and your resources don't always have to be just strictly just technology, but it does help because, like I said, technology is forever changing student learning, and it's very as and sometimes even the technology, you have to decide what technology is best for you and also for your students. So in conclusion, basically, with the assured model, so basically it's just like a standard, like a guideline. So whenever you're incorporating technology within your students, you always got to make sure that that you're following it to the letter when you're analyzing your students, analyzing your learners, and you're having um, the standards that's aligned with the state standards, the learning objectives that is that is asking your students to perform certain tasks by using different adjective verbs. It's You have to select the different strategies because remember, every student can learn, but they learn differently. So it's up to you to find out. You have to know your kids. You have to know your students to find out how they learn and the resources that can back it up. You have to utilize your resources. So basically, you have to observe your resources. Your resources. You have to check it out, prepare it, make sure that the room is accessible, because you also have to think about this too. If the room is accessible, or if you have like a blind or visually impaired student, or you have a hearing impaired student, you want to make sure that they sit close as possible. Yeah, and make sure that the materials are appropriate. The required learner participation, that basically you have to try to school away from the traditional sense, and you always got to incorporate other different types of resources, technology devices, and also to help to enhance the learning. Also to evaluate and to revise. So after your lesson, you can evaluate yourself, or somebody else can evaluate you to see how well that you've done, and which I'm sure I'm going to get plenty of evaluation from this lesson, which is all good because it's all about learning. It's all about learning and growing, because you can't get better at your craft if you don't know what to improve or how to improve it. So that concludes my presentation on chapter 3. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next time.